Welcome to the Labor TV Communicators Show. My name is Sarah Miracle, and this is our first show on nurses. Most of us have participated in raising money for our local charitable hospitals. I remember my mom baking cupcakes for our hospital bake sales, and I even got involved as a teen making Christmas cards for the annual holiday hospital fundraiser. But this all changed when the hospital sold to a national conglomerate. Not only did the corporate conglomerate purchase our hospital, but they purchased 1,000 more just like it. Their sole purpose became about cutting costs while increasing annual profits, and this changed American healthcare dramatically. Healthcare stopped being about patient care and became all about the profits. And as profits dipped, these corporations went to war with our nurses, our unions, specifically the National Nurses United and California Nurses Association. By reducing the ratio of nurses to patients, conglomerate profits soared. But what happens when there are too few nurses? What does this mean to you as a patient, your grandmother, your child? As nurses are overworked, the quality of patient care plummets. And at some point, we will all be a patient. This is not an issue that affects only our nurses. This is an issue that affects our whole community. Nurses are now expected to skip meals and bathroom breaks while managing a large patient workload. Is this the quality of healthcare we want in America, where we put profits before life itself?
Before ratios were put into law, I had 10 patients by myself on night shift.
And I had 10 plus patients.
I didn't have enough feet, enough hands to get the work done.
The patients are calling, and you just can't go to 7, 8 people at the same time.
After the ratios was achieved in California, they have come back to the profession.
I said, if CNA won ratios for the nurses here, I want to be a part of CNA.
I was so happy for ratios. It was a godsend.
When the ratios came, it was like, hallelujah, because then you were really able to give true patient care.
The thing that changed the most was quality of care. You know, I was able to really devote myself to every single patient.
We're able to consult with each other because there are a lot more nurses on the floor, and we're able to support each other. And we have all these safeguards in place because of ratio.
After the ratios went into effect, patients were better educated on how to take their medications when they got home.
And it also guarantees the patient that when you come into the hospital, you're going to be taken care of by a registered nurse. And that's a big difference.
It gives me the time to look at their chart and look at the doctor's progress notes so I can see the big picture of what's going on with the patient.
I went to this one floor and talked to those nurses. There was 2 nurses on a floor with over 25 to 30 patients. Patients screaming out in pain. And that's when I knew right then and there, in every state, we got to have ratios.
See all the great things that ratios bring to nurses and their patients.
Fight for it because the patients deserve it. Fight for it because that's why you came into nursing. Our profession speaks for itself because we are the patient's advocate.
Complete Bay Area news coverage starts right now. This is the 10 o'clock news on KTBU Channel 2.
Good evening. I'm Julie Hayner.
And I'm Frank Somerville.
Nurses at 5 University of California medical centers say they're ready to walk off the job. The labor dispute centers on what the nurses call an alarming decline in safe staffing levels. KTVU's Amber Lee is in San Francisco with the latest on when a strike might take place. Amber.
Julie, over the weekend, nurses at 5 University of California hospitals, including UCSF here on Parnassus, voted to authorize a strike. They tell us it's not about salaries, but patient care.
We are moving at a very fast pace, and that's my fear, is that we're going to make a mistake and that patients aren't getting the care they need in a timely manner. You know, patients call for help and they want a nurse right there. They don't want to wait a half an hour.
Maureen Dugan and other UCSF nurses tell us this summer the hospital cut the number of nurses during each shift. That means at times nurses work a 12-hour shift with no breaks and take on more patients.
It's very frustrating when there are impediments to me taking care of my patients the way they deserve and need to be taken care of.
State law requires hospitals to have the ratio of 1 nurse per 5 patients. The ratio could be lower depending on how sick the patients are, such as those in ICU. But some nurses are alleging that UC is violating the law, for example, by placing ICU patients in other units where nurses have to care for more patients.
We absolutely comply with the state law. The second thing I would say is UC medical centers are known nationwide, if not worldwide, for outstanding patient care, and we don't get that reputation with lax staffing levels.
UC says staffing levels should be resolved at each individual hospital between the managers and the nurses.
We agree it's a key issue. We, I think, just disagree in terms of how it should be addressed. Our view is that it should be addressed locally in each hospital.
Tonight we caught up with Raul Diaz as he arrived at the hospital to visit his nephew who was recently paralyzed in a car accident. He told us he's noticed how overworked the nurses are.
The response to my nephew when he makes a request is not as quick as it could be, and we know they are understaffed.
The level of care that we have given has constantly increased, and the amount of tasks that nurses have to do have constantly increased, but UC has adjusted staffing for that.
The nurses union has not yet set a date for a strike date. Both UC and the union hope to resume negotiations after the holidays. there has never been a nurses' strike at UC hospitals. Reporting live here in San Francisco, Amber Lee, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
Because of the ratios, the nurses are able to give the care that patients need and not hurt a patient. That we would never want to do that to anybody, because we go to bed and we wake up with the same conscience every day. And what we do at work, we think about in our hearts all the time.
One of the reasons that we had to have ratios was because we were losing so many nurses. They were going home feeling so guilty about the care that they weren't able to provide.
A lot of the nurses left prior to the ratios. We would go home frustrated, thinking, are we really taking care of them?
Nurses were really getting burnt out, so I saw a mass exodus of nurses, and it was because we were responsible for way too many patients. When I was a med-surg nurse, a typical assignment on the night shift for me was 12 to 24, and that's unmanageable.
That was eating at their conscience. They couldn't take it. They physically couldn't take the feeling of such despair.
A medical dream comes true under the drive of industrialist Henry Kaiser, who holds the plans of the ultra-modern hospital
In California, we were the first state to actually have healthcare corporations, essentially displacing community care with corporate care. So registered nurses were feeling, in California, were feeling the devastating effects of a shift from a community-based healthcare system to a corporate system.
I was scared half to death to be put in a situation where I would have to try to scramble to take care of 10 patients at a time.
We don't even know whether we've done everything correctly and thoroughly with our patient because of the number of patients. It was just a volume.
Care was so bad that patients were actually having to call 911 from their bedside.
We had to somehow have some type of a staffing system where we could safely ensure patients would get the care they needed.
They were cutting more nurses, and the nurses who were left behind were having an impossible time caring for their patients, as they are throughout the world. The nurses were angry. We tried striking, we tried lobbying, we tried public awareness campaigns. We tried just about everything, and the only thing that was left to do was actually to change the law and say, no, patients have to have care. The nurses, boy, they were up for that fight. Thousands of nurses came together continuously to tell the legislators, we're going to have ratios.
We took time to go to Sacramento, to walk the halls of the Capitol, speak to the legislators, and push.
Nurses in California basically put their power on the line. And boy, in doing that, they were unstoppable. Every legislator was afraid of them. I can tell you that. I lived with that. I saw it. I saw them cringe. I saw them run to our rallies when they said they wouldn't come. I saw the nurses take over the state building. I saw them trying to evict the nurses from the state building, and they wouldn't leave.
I remember, I've been there. I was in Sacramento too. We had bus loads of nurses and just being so united and so determined that we will win this for our patients because we are the patient advocate.
We brought patients out who were harmed in the hospitals, and they were wonderful in terms of testifying. So we decided to do a patient watch campaign, and we asked people to tell us what was happening with their care. We were flooded with stories. And the people who were writing those stories and telling us their stories also came to lobby with us. So we had a campaign that was complex, and everyone was in motion.
The one that really strikes me was the feeling of accomplishment and empowerment of all nurses when Governor Gray Davis announced that he was going to sign the ratios into law. And nurses were waving, they were all excited, they were, watching what was happening, and it was like they finally saw the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel, that they would actually be able to practice nursing the way that they knew they could.
We put this thing into legislation and it became law. There was a big resistance about it. So much resistance from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We got a phone call from our GR staff saying Arnold is implementing emergency regulations to help undo the ratios the next day.
Nurses, it turned out, were everywhere, and they were relentless.
You know, he'd go to a private home fundraiser, we'd be there. It didn't matter where he was, we would be there.
We did a billboard, and we also then got a truck where we drove the billboard around. News cameras came to take pictures of the nurses and the billboard. It was really kind of fun.
The Schwarzenegger fight and the nurses' subsequent win on all fronts was the shot heard round the world.
We kicked Arnold's butt and we got it, so, you know, there goes with the racial history in brief. After the ratios was achieved in California, they have come back to the profession.
I was so happy for ratios. It was a godsend.
The ratios are worth it. The ratios are so worth it, and your advocacy will be even taken to another level by having ratios.
When the ratios came, it was like, hallelujah, because then you were really able to give true patient care.
Ratios save lives. And you know, we said that and we said that and we said that, and we fought for 20 years and we said it, and lo and behold, the studies now show ratios save lives. Ratios were transformative, they were powerful, they taught the nurses how to define themselves in a way that hadn't occurred prior to the ratios. It was a radical transformation in terms of how work occurred in the hospitals. California, they have obviously the best contracts throughout the world. They are, you know, they've set standards, but part of that was the fight that they went through to achieve ratios. I'm honored to actually have lived with the nurses that fought the fight to change the face of healthcare in many, many ways. I'm just honored and thrilled, and it's exciting. Yeah.
Celebrate ratio because we fought very, very, very hard. It was not an easy fight.
Having the nurse-to-patient ratio has been a wonderful thing because it allows nurses to provide the best care at all times.
It keeps our patients safe. It's absolutely key to being able to provide good care for our patients.
The celebration should be really of life, of all the lives that we saved because of the ratios, all the patients that are still with us.
Ratios!
15 years.
15 years.
15 years.
15 years of nurse-to-patient ratios.
The whole world needs ratios.
It takes a spark to get a fire burning. It takes one voice to lead the world in song. It takes some heart to hold on to the vision. It takes a dream. Together we can. Together we can make a difference. Together we can lead the way. Together we can make it happen. Be the change we long to see. Together we can build a future in hope and harmony. Together we can make the dream reality. It's so hard. do set that spark of hope ablaze. Oh, hey, oh. Oh, hey, oh. It's time for the world to sing a song. Oh, hey, oh. Oh, hey, oh. Let's join our hearts to embrace the vision. Oh, hey, oh. A dream that lives beyond today. Together we can make a difference. Together we can lead the way. Together we can make it happen. Be the change we long to see. Together we can build a future in hope and harmony. Together we can make the dream reality. Together we can. Together we can. We can make a difference. Together we can.
There's a healthcare crisis in this town. Stand up! Look around! There's a healthcare crisis in this town. Stand up! Look around! Stand up! Look around! There's a healthcare crisis in this town. Stand up! Look around! Up with the nurses. Yeah, yeah. Team on Memorial. Up with the nurses. Yeah, yeah. Team on Memorial.
Allison Miller, I'm an adult oncology RN at Long Beach Memorial.
So today you guys are protesting. What are the reasons for your protest?
Patient care safety issues. We are fighting against the working conditions.
So explain all that, please. We don't know any of it.
I sit on the negotiation table, and we've been in a labor dispute with our hospital regarding patient care issues that we can't come to terms with. We need break relief nurses that come in and cover one-on-one patient care. What's happening is right now, standard practice is you have a break cover who comes in and will cover 2 teams at a time. California mandates safe staffing ratios at all times. I can give you an example.
Yeah, please do.
You have an adult oncology floor. California states they should be in a 1-to-4 assignment. That means 1 RN for 4 patients. That's an oncology cancer patient. Long Beach Memorial has some medical patients that overflow onto our oncology unit. So they therefore say that we're deemed a medical oncology floor and run us at a 1-to-5 assignment, which means that you'll have 1 RN for 5 patients. When lunchtime comes around, they cover 2 RNs at a time. So essentially you have 1 RN for 10 patients. So you'll have an oncology patient in a 1-to-10 assignment when the state mandates that they need to be in a 1-to-4. So, nurses typically need to have their breaks because they work 12 hours. This is a very long time to be working. And what nurses will sometimes do is forego their breaks. I can't take a break because who's going to take care of my patients safely? Who's going to watch them? They can't cover themselves. We need the patients to have their care continued while we're on breaks.
So
you don't want a nurse not taking a break because
it actually jeopardizes the patient's life.
It puts them in an unsafe situation. We've had codes where we've had to resuscitate patients during break time when their nurse was on break. So these are very very big safety issues. The break relief nurses is something that we've tried to speak to our chain of command. We've tried to speak to our CEO. We've brought it to the table in negotiations, and they're just not seeing the problem. They're not recognizing our issue. Second issue is the lift teams. Again, it's state mandated. You're supposed to have lift assist teams. If you look at the big hospital, we have two large hospitals, Long Beach Memorial and Miller's Children's Hospital. We have 4 lift assists. That's 4 people for both hospitals on any 12-hour shift. 4 people, that's your lift assist team. Patients are falling, they're on the floor when the nurses are calling for help, lift assist, to come to help them pick up the patient in a safe manner up off the floor, back into bed. They're saying they're not available. Back injuries are one of the #1 nursing injuries. I'm injured myself, not from a back injury, but just running for a crash cart. I tore my meniscus and had to have surgery. Nurses get injured in the workplace. That's why California has a law that we need lift teams. And so Memorial says, well, we have a lift team, but if you look at these large hospitals, they have 4 people. That's what they're calling a lift team. We need lift assist on each floor, present on the floor, so that when things happen and our patients fall, they're there readily. They're not having to wait.
So when Governor Davis was in charge, he made it mandatory 1 to 5 nurse to 1.
He passed the Safe Patient Ratio Act, and the hospitals had a lot of time to prep for that. They knew that it had been coming. It had passed. They had ratios at the first year at a certain amount of time, and then after a few more years into it, they went down to where they had to have more staff to kind of give them a preparedness. Okay, by this year, this is how you're going to staff, and by this coming year, you're going to have even more staff, because they knew that it would require for the hospital to hire more nurses so that they were no longer breaking the law.
What do you guys want?
We want break relief nurses who continue patient care when the nurses are on break.
So this is not about pay increase?
No, it's not. The hospital really focuses on that. They are very much aware with the monies. Ours is for the patient. It's all these nurses out here, they're out here for the patients. They'll tell you so.
Any last word you want to give?
I want our employer to settle the contract and give the patients what they need. But this is a fight for the patients. It's really for the community. They need to have safe care at all times.
May I ask you one more thing? Your contract, has your contract expired and now you...
Yeah, right now we're working without a contract, but we're still negotiating.
How long did negotiations been going on?
We started in July. It's been a long labor dispute. And this was like the last thing we wanted to do. We don't want to be out here. We've only called a 1-day strike. The hospital is punishing us and locking us out for 5 days.
That's without pay?
Without pay. That's without pay. Now listen, if it was about pay, would the nurses be out here? You see what I'm saying? You're not being paid to be out here. It's not about pay. Nurses out on a strike line aren't out here about wages. They're getting locked out for 5 days. If it was all about the money, they'd be working inside. The nurses working inside are working inside for the money.
The IBW is here today. We'll be here every day it takes till they get the message. The nurses deserve a fair contract. Not only the IBW, the building trades, the entire LA Federation of Labor, 120,000 strong support the nurses along this memorial.
Then stand up and sing this song. Alright. workers' blood. The mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities to the farmlands in trenches full of mud. 'Cause war has always been the boss's way, sir. Come on! The union forever, defending our rights. Let's fight the right wing, our workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters from many far-off lands. There is power in our union. Now I long for the time that they realize brutality and unjust laws could not defeat us. But who'll defend the workers who cannot organize when the DOP send their attorneys out to cheat us? Come on! Money speaks for money, the devil for his own. Who'll come to speak for the skin and the bone? What a comfort to the widow, a life for the child. There is power in our union. Come on! The union forever, defending our rights. Let's fight the right wing, our workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters, together we will stand. There is power in our union.
Just put your paws up, 'cause you were born this way, baby. My mama told me when I was young, we're all born superstars. She rolled my hair, put my lipstick on, in a glass of her boudoir. There's nothing wrong with loving who you are, she said, 'cause he made you perfect, babe. So hold your head up, girl, and you'll go far. Listen to me when I say, I'm beautiful in my way, 'cause I make no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way. Don't hurt yourself and regret, just love yourself instead. I'm on the right track, baby, I was born this way.
My grandmother lived with us when I was 18, and she had Alzheimer's, and I helped take care of her, and that really was my inspiration to become a nurse.
Nurses become nurses because they're passionate about caring for people.
Nurses enter this profession because they want to take care of patients. They're educated to do high-level assessments on patients and care for them in a way that's going to make a difference in their life.
Not having enough nurses to do the job makes you feel that you are not giving your patients the quality of care that they deserve.
When staffing levels are low, how do you choose which patients to take care of?
I'm a critical care nurse, and that requires me to be with the patient 24/7 around the clock. We're titrating drips, we are giving medications, we're assessing pain, we're following orders, we're trying to get the patient to respond to the medications that we're giving them.
Who's going to be there if the nurses are not at the bedside? Who's going to be the person that's laying eyes on you every 24 hours? Who is that person going to be if we don't have enough nurses, or if one nurse is having to take care of 10 patients? Who's going to do that? Who's going to take care of you?
If there's a shortage of nurses in intensive care, it can really have effects on patient outcomes because the patients are critical at that time and need the care immediately, and it can't be put off till later.
We understand that hospitals are facing tough economic challenges, but by cutting the nursing staff, patients are going to end up being readmitted because of complications because the nurses were not able to care for them properly. And this is going to cost the hospitals in the end.
I had a patient that came in from the nursing home and she was dying. She was a do not resuscitate and there was no one with her. I wanted to be at her bedside to be with her so she wouldn't be alone when she was dying. We were extremely short-staffed and there was no way that I could stay with her as she died, and she died alone.
We had a patient who the doctors all collaborated together and even told the family that the patient would not go home. 99.9% would not wake up, would not go home. It was because of the nursing care, the passion with the family, that nurses were there around the clock, that patient was able to go to rehab and walk out of that hospital.
Passage of H.R. 1907 will support the nurses, and they can take care of the patients the way they need to. Every person will be impacted by this legislation because every person is going to be a patient someday, or your loved ones will.
This bill will allow nurses to be a part of setting the staffing ratios. Nurses are who should set staffing ratios because they know what is required to take care of these patients.
It will also impact the reimbursement hospitals receive from the federal government. And it will allow for transparency so everyone will know what their own hospital staffing levels are.
This is the opportunity for everybody to affect their own health care. Each person needs to contact their legislator and tell them to vote for this bill.
Talk about it to your friends, talk about it to your community, and let them know that they can write letters to their representatives and tell them that you want safe staffing, that you want safe patient care.
After a long shift, being short-staffed, you go home at the end of the day feeling inadequate, and this isn't what I signed up to do.
The nurses that I work with will often say we're really busy, and I say to them, we're not busy, we're short-staffed. And if we were adequately staffed, the unit would be running smooth and patients would be getting the care that they needed.
I would want to give to a patient the same that I would give to any of my loved ones. Patients deserve and families deserve that nurse to be there and not to be taken away, and to give the full care that we're able to do.
If we don't have the nursing staff to adequately care for our patients, they don't get the care that they need. An example would be we don't get them up, we can't get them walking. If they can't move and ambulate, they have a much higher chance of getting pneumonia, and that's one of the #1 causes of death for patients in a post-operative period.
The way I look at patient care and healthcare in general is like, if my mom came to this emergency room or if she went into this hospital, how would I want her to be treated?
Many of our patients are on life support, and if we're not attuned to something happening at a critical moment, the patient can die.
To save a few dollars per hour, it's not worth it.
You can't put a price on patient care.
thank each and every one of you. I want to thank CNA for being here, for being here for all of us, for everyone. I want the whole world to know that we have a broken healthcare system. I'm a mother that's gone through so much, and a lot of moms are going through the same thing that I've gone through. And we need to stop this, and we need to stop this now. If our government can have an emergency meeting to bail out $700 billion, they can always have a meeting, a 10-minute meeting for healthcare. This is so important for all of us. I wish I could go there and then face them eye to eye and tell them, only if you would do it, only if it's your own child. Because they don't care. They're getting paid every month. They're getting paid on time. They're cutting our health care so the CEO will enjoy his life or her life. This is not right, you guys. We're going to fight. I will be here for you guys. I'm going to be here for a long time. I'm going to fight. I will not give up. For all of us, for my daughter Natalie, she's been with me. She was with me last night. She came in my dream as a baby, and I know she's telling me, go mom, go get him. And I'm going to do it. Thank you so much. Insurance company can't decide who's going to live and who's going to die. Only doctors and nurses. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, CNA. I'll back up a little to go over my history. I've been a nurse for 30 years, and 2 years ago I had worked on a Friday, and the following Monday I went into the emergency room and was diagnosed with cancer. That started a 2-year series where I learned that I have had not just 2, but actually within the last year, a 3rd cancer. I've had chemotherapy, I've had 4 major surgeries, and radiation is still a possibility. But what happened that was so horrible is that after paying into healthcare my whole professional life, I found out that as the owner of a short-term policy, that once the policy expired, not a single insurance company in this country would insure me. It's a road to becoming uninsurable if you become ill while you're on a short-term policy. And this is corrupt.
Tuition-free public college, cancellation of all student debt, $15 an hour campus-wide minimum wage at every college in the country. These are the demands of the hundreds of nurses and students who assembled at the University of California, Berkeley, part of the Million Student March National Day of Action. Students and nurses marched to the administration building, posting cards showing the amounts of student loan debts they've been saddled with. According to a recent online article from Fortune, a study released by the Institute for College Access and Success found that nearly 70% of students graduate with an average loan debt of $28,950. Nurses say they are still paying off their loans as well as the loans of their children.
We, as nurses and also as mothers, as also college students, we see the suffering, and there is no way we're going to sit there and watch it happen without advocating for them. You know, by virtue of our profession, we are patient advocates and we are social advocates, and that's why we're here.
These students are our future leaders. They're our children, and some of us will have children going to school and pursuing a college education. So it's very important we support them now in getting a free education to better our communities and our nation.
This nationwide student march was inspired by Vermont Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. According to Sanders, free education could be subsidized by the so-called Robin Hood tax.
If we just put a fine on every transaction at Wall Street, about 0.005%, that in itself would generate $300 billion a year, enough to pay for student and college education, pay off the student loan, do all the infrastructure that's needed.
We as Americans have to support the Robin Hood tax. The amount of money that will be taxed to Wall Street will surely help a lot of parents of today.
Sanders won the endorsement of National Nurses United, the nation's largest nurses union, for his positions on the economy and healthcare.
There should not be a single American who cannot dream to go to college. It shouldn't be a dream. It should be a reality. And there should not be, healthcare should be a right and not a privilege. And that is all going to change once we all work together to make sure he becomes the president.
The Million Student March took place in over 100 colleges and universities across the country. Ramel Conclair, ABS-CBN News, Berkeley, California.
Are you ready for a brand new beat? NNU's here and the time is right for dancing in the street. Dancing in the street. Down in New Orleans. Don't forget the Motor City. Dancing in the street. All we need is Tax Wall Street. Tax Wall Street. There'll be money everywhere. Teachers teaching and nurses healing, texting Wall Street. Oh, it doesn't matter if they care, just as long as we are there. So come on, every guy, every girl, everywhere around the world, taxing Wall Street. Across the nation, a chance to meet our needs. This is an invitation across the nation, a chance to meet our needs.